To introduce myself, I'm Tenzin, Assistant Program Coordinator of Tibet House, New Delhi, and I welcome you all to our 13th session of today's virtual program, which is on Introduction to Buddhism, and it is taught by different speakers with profound knowledge on Nalanda Buddhist Studies. And today, we are very glad and honored to have among us Dr. Manwongla, who will be speaking on Bodhicaryavatara, Series 1, Chapter 7 on enthusiasm. But before we proceed, I would like to introduce today's speaker. So Dr. Manwongla, she recently completed her Nalanda Master Course, Batch 1 from Tibet House. She has experience in the fields of higher education, public policy, media, and communications in Singapore and Australia. In recent years, she has been delivering secular mindfulness-based training to different organizations and individuals as well. And I now request Dr. Wongla to kindly proceed the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanzila. So thank you very much to Tibet House and to Geshe-la for giving me this opportunity to be able to share a bit on the Dharma. And I think maybe I will just start with sharing the screen. And thank you very much to all the participants here who are showing a lot of enthusiasm for supporting a Dharma sister. So today the content for the session is actually on chapter 7 and it's on enthusiasm. At the moment, I think somehow I am not able to do the sharing. When I press share, it says I can't share the contents.
Oh, okay, Dr. Wongla, let me check once again.
No worries. But so in the meantime, I think at the start of every session, it's always very good practice first just to spend a few minutes to settle our minds and to really let go of whatever we've been busy with and return the attention to the session in order to get the most out of the session, and also to set our motivation for attending the session. Because I think whatever results that we get will be commensurate with the intention that we set. So I'd just like to invite everyone maybe just to adjust your body posture so that you're sitting comfortably, and just to bring an attention to our breathing for a couple of minutes and placing our attention there to center ourselves. So in the space of relative mental calmness, let us set an intention to share the Dharma in this session in order to deepen our understanding and practice of the Dharma and fulfill our aspiration to attain full awakening in order to benefit all sentient beings. So, thank you very much. And now I will just share screen. So for those of you who are listening to this session right now, I can assure you that you're in for a treat. Not so much because of what I have to say, but because of the verses that I'll be sharing from Bodhisattva Shantideva, which is full of wisdom and practical advice, and also presented in a very vivid, hard-hitting, and sometimes very graphic way. And I think most of you would already be familiar with this text, Bodhicaryavatara, or Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, by 8th century Buddhist master Bodhisattva Shantideva. But in case you have not been exposed to the previous chapters or to this text, I thought I would just set today's talk in context of where it is in the text. And so this is chapter 7, Enthusiasm. And A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life actually has 10 chapters, and they're respectively organized in this way. So the first 3 chapters actually introduces us to the benefits of developing an awakening mind or bodhicitta, and encourages us to generate this mind. And it also covers a bit of preliminary practices on confessing and purifying negativities and on the accumulation of merit. And then in the third chapter, it is the undertaking to generate this mind of full awakening and undertaking the bodhisattva vow. So bodhicitta is actually an aspiration for us to want to become a Buddha or to develop a fully awakened mind in order to benefit all sentient beings. And the definition of a bodhisattva is someone who has generated spontaneous bodhicitta. And so from then on, then the next few chapters really is about the deeds that the bodhisattva has to engage in order to attain the goal of becoming a Buddha. And of these chapters, the first 3 from chapters 4, 5, 6 onwards is basically aimed at practicing in order not to degenerate the bodhicitta that has been generated. And 7, 8, and 9 is to really to try to increase and develop the bodhicitta so that we can attain the goal of becoming a Buddha. And so chapter 7 is actually the first of these 3 chapters to increase our bodhicitta. And there are several translations of the different chapter titles. And for chapter 7, there has been translations of enthusiasm. I've also seen translation of joyous effort, joyous perseverance. And so for myself, I actually do prefer the translation of joyous effort. I don't know how close each of the translation is to the original word, but for me, it does convey the sense that in undertaking this practice, we have to exert some effort or really persevere on that, and not just have a sort of 5 minutes burst of enthusiasm, and then it should be accompanied by joy. So in the course of this session, probably I will be using very much a mainly joyous effort, but sometimes I'll also refer to enthusiasm. And joyous effort is actually one of the 6 perfections that a bodhisattva has to train in. And again, in order to set this in context of where it is in the bodhisattva's journey, I would just like to very briefly refer to a very lovely analogy that Geji Doji Damdula uses all the time, which is about the train. So, this blue little person is where we are at this point in time, a very ordinary being. And for a very, very long time, we have been driven by our self-grasping ignorance and self-centered attitude in moving in this train of the mind that is heading in a very, very wrong direction towards a lot of suffering in samsara. And so, having generated the mind of bodhicitta, we are really trying to reverse this process and trying to move towards Buddhahood. And so then initially, what we would want to do is to try to stop the train from moving in the wrong direction. And for that, a bodhisattva practices generosity, which is really to try to start connecting with people, releasing our attachment to self-cherishing. And then ethical discipline, which is to stop harming people. And in this process of trying to stop this very fast-moving train, we'll invariably encounter challenges. And so we also bring in the practice of patience, of forbearance. And then once the train has stopped, then what we want to do is to try to reverse the direction of the train towards Buddhahood. And trying to do that is not an easy process at all. So it's in the teachings, it's said that it will take 3 countless great aeons. And it is also practicing things that we are all not very used to, the virtuous actions instead of, all the non-virtues that we have been accumulating and doing so far. And so for that, then we need to exert effort, and that effort should be joyous. So that is in that context that is coming in. And once we are able to gather the energy for this train to move very fast, then we also practice alongside, to try to cultivate the light of the wisdom in order to counter our self-grasping ignorance, and then also the meditative concentration to steady this light of the wisdom in order to attain Buddhahood. So that is basically where joyous effort comes in. And so now we go to the very first verse of this chapter, which is, having patience, I should develop enthusiasm. For awakening will dwell only in those who exert themselves. Just as there is no movement without wind, so merit does not occur without enthusiasm. So this translation is taken from the translation by Dr. Stephen Batchelor. And what it's basically saying is that you have a goal in mind, you want to become a Buddha, we have to put in the effort to get there. And without exerting ourselves, we won't be able to complete the accumulation of merit and wisdom. So, we need this effort. And what exactly is enthusiasm or joyous effort? So the definition is given here. It is finding joy in what is wholesome. Or there's also a translation that says it's delighting in virtue. So doing something that is virtuous. And then the question comes in, is like, at this point in time, do we take delight in virtue? Right? And if not, why not? And so if you're like me, do you kind of tell yourself that, oh, okay, today I'm a bit tired, it's very late, maybe I'll do the shorter version of the practice instead of the longer version? And it happens every day, every day I do the short version. Or when you hear that, there are 3 class sessions in a week instead of 2 that you expected, you just go, but I have other things that I have to do. Or maybe if you're engaged in volunteer work, and you say, why am I always doing this? Isn't there other volunteers who can come in to do this thing? I need a break. I need to go to the movies. I need to watch TV. I need to have some nice meals with my friends and family. So does that strike a chord with you? Yeah. Or if not, congratulations if you're not like me. So this is where I am right now. So then the question is sort of why and what is stopping us from being more enthusiastic about engaging in these kind of virtuous actions? And here I'm reminded of something that my parents used to say to me when I was young. I would just say, okay, don't be this person who wears a big biscuit. And so this phrase actually comes from a Chinese folklore, where it's said that there is this boy who kind of doesn't lift a finger to do anything. And there was once his mother has to go to town for a few days, and then she prepared for him a very big biscuit and hangs it around his neck. And so this boy would only eat the portion of the biscuit that's within the reach of his mouth. The end of story is he died. And you might think that, oh, okay, this sounds like a very absurd story, right? But who is to say, that in the process of trying to exert effort in engaging in virtue, that we are not like this boy who wears the big biscuit? And who is to say that we won't be experiencing a consequence that is as dire or even more dire than that? And so Bodhisattva Shantideva is pointing out that sort of one of the main factors that's preventing us from exerting joyous effort really is laziness. And he identifies 3 types of laziness. And so this is part of verse 2, which is the opposing factors to enthusiasm are explained as laziness, attraction to what is harmful, and despising oneself out of despondency. So laziness here actually refers to the kind of laziness that's not wishing to do good, So it has also been sometimes translated as a laziness or procrastination, or a laziness that's attached to idleness. So that's just one type. That's called the first type of laziness. Then the second type is being distracted by unwholesome activities. And the third type is despising oneself out of despondency, being discouraged from engaging in virtue because we doubt our own ability. So these are the three types of laziness. And this is the brief presentation. So then Bodhisattva Shantideva goes on to elaborate on these kinds of laziness and its remedies. So the first type is, what is this type of laziness? It is attachment to the pleasurable taste of idleness because of craving for sleep and because of having no disillusion with the mystery of cycle existence. Laziness grows very strong. So this first type of laziness is related to all these three. Just lazing around, enjoying our sleep, our pillow and our bed, and then not really being repulsed by samsara, not thinking about the miseries of samsara, and then this laziness just grows. And so then what is the main remedy to this kind of laziness? And here, so I remember a consultation that I had with one of my teachers. Because usually when people go through some major illness, we come across people who go through major illness, we read about them, and we do see that these people, after that, really have a change in perspective and change in lifestyle that's for the better. And some of them, really become very serious about their Dharma practice as well. So I was kind of mentioning to my teacher and say, oh, but for myself, I think I'm just still lacking a lot in energy and enthusiastic effort, no matter what the circumstances are. And then she said, well, this is because you don't really believe that you will die. And that, really stuck with me. So you don't really believe that you will die. And that's exactly the remedy that Bodhisattva Shantideva has suggested for us, which is to think about death and impermanence. So really thinking about that and applying it to ourselves. And so the following verses actually covers three of the main points in the meditation on death. That death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, and at the time of death, nothing can benefit us except for the Dharma. And so I'll just read through these verses. And enmeshed in the snare of disturbing conceptions, I have entered the snare of birth. Why am I still not aware that I live in the mouth of the Lord of Death? Do I not see that he's systematically slaughtering my species? Whoever remains soundly asleep surely behaves like a buffalo with a butcher. When having blocked off every escape route, the Lord of Death is looking for someone to kill. How can I enjoy eating? And likewise, how can I enjoy sleep? And here, I think, again, it comes back to the way Bodhisattva Shantideva presents the verses in a very graphic way. And I think it is very useful to maybe also to take some of these examples and really think about them in our daily life. Like verse 5, which is saying that cows, sheep, buffaloes are all being slaughtered for their meat. And yet, the cows who are still grazing on the grass just very happily just eat and enjoy sort of eating the grass. And they are totally unaware that they are next to be sent to the slaughterhouse. And so if we have this kind of more graphic image in our mind, maybe it's easier then for us to be thinking about how death is always approaching us. And so for as long as death is actually approaching, then I shall accumulate merits. Even if I then put a stop to laziness, what will be the use? That is not the time. So this verse is saying, okay, a lot of time we tend to think that we have a lot of time left. And that's why we postpone. Say, okay, we will really get serious about our Dharma practice next year. 10 years' time when I retire, and so on. And then, you know, when death strikes, then we say, okay, what can I do? And maybe you want to start practicing. So, you know, maybe you start reciting your Amitabha Buddha mantras. And please, please, you know, Amitabha, can I go to the Pure Land? And this is like akin to a Chinese idiom that says that, you know, we are trying to grab the Buddha's feet at the very last minute. So, and Bodhisattva Shantideva is pointing out that this is totally, you know, not useful at all. Because if we haven't been practicing when our mind is healthy, when our body is healthy, at the time of death, near the time of death, when our body is weak, our mind is unclear, we are probably freaking out if we have not practiced that we are going to die. So, you know, it will not be useful, you know, to try to practice the Dharma at all at that time. So when this and death can approach at any moment. It doesn't wait for you and say, okay, let me finish this first. So when this has not been done, when this is being done in the midst of anything, when this is only half finished, suddenly the Lord of Death will come and the thought will occur, oh no, I'm done for. Their faces flowing with tears and their eyes red and swollen with sorrow, my relatives will finally lose hope, and I shall behold the vision of the messengers of death. Tormented by the memory of my wrongdoings and hearing the sounds of hell, in terror, I shall clothe my body in excrement. What virtue can I do in such a delirious state? And then, so that is really thinking about death and really trying to use that to help us to generate a sense of urgency about our Dharma practice. And our teachers, I think, also have suggested to us that whenever we come across cases of death, you know, whether it's a personal experience of someone close to us dying, or maybe reading about it, to always try to bring it back to ourselves, to always think that the next person can be us. So that is very, very helpful. And then beyond that, to also think about, you know, if we have not been engaging in virtue, if we have not been practicing in the Dharma, if all our actions are just being driven by a lot of attachment and anger, what is going to happen to us after that? And so these verses say, if even in this life I shall be gripped with fear, like that of a live fish being rolled in hot sand, why even mention the unbearable agonies of hell that will result from my unwholesome deeds? How can I remain at ease like this when I have committed the actions that will bear fruit in my delicate infant's body encountering boiling acids in the hell of tremendous heat? Much harm befalls those with little forbearance and those who want results without making any effort. While clasped by death, they shall cry like the gods, oh no, I'm overcome by mystery. And so here it's just said that if we can't even bear, you know, it's bad enough to be a live fish being rolled in hot sand, right? But in the hell realms, it said that the skin is so delicate, like an infant's body, but yet the heat, you know, that is sort of torturing us is much, much hotter than whatever we can experience in the human realm. And can imagine that kind of suffering. So again, I think probably just using this kind of graphic descriptions to help us also develop this greater sense of fear of being reborn in the lower realms. And so if we don't, you know, we don't bear some hardships in this life to engage in virtue, we don't make any efforts, then, you know, at the time of death, we'll just be freaked out, totally freaked out. And so then Bodhisattva Shantideva says, encourages us to say, now that we have a precious human life, relying upon the boat of a human body, try to free yourself from the great river of pain, as it is hard to find this boat again. This is no time for sleep, you fool. That's from him. And that's what I say about hard hitting. He doesn't mince his words. It's that we are being very foolish if we don't take advantage of this very precious human rebirth. So, and that concludes the first section on what is the first type of laziness and what are some of the remedies to counter that. And then going on to the second and third types of laziness, then the second one is being attracted to unwholesome activities. So here it says, having rejected the supreme joy of the sacred Dharma, that is a boundless source of delight, why am I distracted by the causes for pain? Why do I enjoy frivolous amusements and the like? So again, then remembering that as long as we are driven by our attachment, our anger to engage in activities, it will only result in suffering for us. Not necessarily, manifest suffering, pains, but also the suffering of change and just the basic condition suffering of being born again and again in this cycle of samsara existence. And when we talk about frivolous amusements, I just recall that there was an article that I read recently in the BBC, which says that there was an Indian man who actually flew all the way to Dubai in order to become the first man in India to own an iPhone 14. And in that article, it was also said that some people even sell their organs in order to buy iPhones. And again, it may sound very bizarre to us, right? But if we think for ourselves, each of us might be, spending a lot of time and effort in, equally frivolous amusements. And so, really it's for us to think for ourselves, what are the things that we are spending a lot of time on that is not going to become the cause for our happiness, but will just trap us more and more into samsara. And so then, without indulging in despondency, I shall gather the supports for enthusiasm and earnestly take control of myself. Then, by seeing the equality between self and others, I shall practice exchanging self for others. So this paragraph actually is kind of summary for what is going to be elaborated on in the later section on what are the supports that we can draw on in order to try to generate enthusiasm and how to sort of gain better control over our afflictions. And then the last two lines is actually the method of cultivating bodhicitta that will be elaborated more on in chapter 8. And this is also the verse that leads into the third type of laziness, which is the laziness that is discouraged by virtue. Mm. The laziness that thinks, wow, I'm just me, this insignificant me. How can I, work for 3 countless great aeons to become a Buddha? How is that possible for me? Right? I mean, we do have this question. It takes a long time. It takes many lives. It requires exertion of effort. Can I do it? And so this is actually answered in the next verse. I should never indulge in despondency by entertaining such thoughts as, how shall I ever awaken? Because the Buddha has said that we can. We have the Buddha nature. So how the Tathagatas who speak what is true have uttered this truth. If they develop the strength of their exertion, even those who are flies, mosquitoes, bees, and insects will win the unsurpassable awakening, which is so hard to find. So we shall gain confidence in the Buddha's words that we all have this Buddha nature, the potential to become enlightened, even for beings who are now flies, mosquitoes, bees, and insects. And what more that when we are actually at the moment a human being with human intelligence. And so, if we do not forsake the Bodhisattva's way of life, why should someone like myself, who has been born in the human race, not attain awakening? Since I'm able to recognize what is beneficial and what is of harm. So we do have this intelligence to know what is beneficial for us, what is harmful for us, and have this ability also to try to refrain from doing what is harmful for us and to engage in what is beneficial for us. So, thinking in this way. And then, but this is not the sort of the end of the section. So we have always heard our teachers say, that students will go to them for advice. And usually our teachers will give the advice. And then the student would say, yes, I agree. Yes, I agree that I have the Buddha nature. But, and so then the qualm arises in this case. It frightens me to think that I may have to give away my arms and legs. So in the Bodhisattva practice of generosity, right? So that is that okay, at a very high level of practice, you will happily give away your body. And so in the Jataka tales, the Buddha, when he was a Bodhisattva at one time, gave his body very happily to a tigress and the cubs. And then this frightens us and say, how can we do that? And and Bodhisattvas chanted that by saying, your fear is unfounded. Um, you are actually, engaged in some very confused way of thinking. So without discriminating between what is heavy and what is light, I'm reduced to fear through confusion. And for over countless myriads of aeons, I've been cut, stabbed, burned, and flayed alive in innumerable times, but I have not awakened. So what this is saying is that we have not generated the bodhicitta ever in our lives. And yet in the course of, the many lives, maybe as animals, as a food source, we have been cut, stabbed, burned. We have been in the hell with cut, stabbed, burned many times. And it is not for the sake of a bodhisattva practice at all. And then, if we do engage in, let's say, giving away our arms and legs and our body as part of the bodhisattva deeds, this is only going to move us closer towards enlightenment. And so whatever hardships that we bear in the course of becoming a Buddha actually will bear fruit at the end. And it has a time limit, even though it's very long. So, whereas if I don't practice the Bodhisattva deeds, I don't engage in Dharma practice, I'll forever just have to bear all these sufferings in the samsara endlessly, with no end to it. So that's what this verse is saying. So even if you have some illness, even doctors will eliminate illness with some unpleasant medical treatments, right? You have to bear some discomfort, a bit of suffering just to clear this illness. So in order to overcome manifold sufferings, many, many lifetimes, intense sufferings, I should be able to put up with some discomfort. And then, but the Supreme Physician does not employ common medical treatments such as these. With an extremely gentle technique, he remedies all the greatest ills. So it's said here that the Buddha didn't recommend ways where, he just suggests to us immediately to go and cut a leg immediately, go out and feed it to the dog. He doesn't do that. What he has recommended is a very gentle path that doesn't involve harming ourselves. And so then the response comes. At the beginning, the guide of the world encourages the giving of such things as food. So we start small. We give away some food. Later, when accustomed to this, one may progressively start to give away even one's flesh. So as we develop our abilities, as we go to higher levels of realizations, then it becomes something that's quite natural. It is not asking us to give away our body right now when we're still, under the influence of a lot of self-grasping. That will give us a lot of pain. So this is the Bodhisattva's advanced deeds. So at the time when my mind is more matured, more developed, the point of regarding my body like food, then what hardship would there be when it comes to giving away my flesh? So when we are at that level, then it's fine. There's no pain, and we'll very, very happily give away our body and our flesh. For the Bodhisattvas, so having forsaken all transgressions, so they are not engaging in non-virtue anymore, and there would be no suffering, no physical pain. And due to wisdom that realizes the emptiness of inherent existence, they are no longer grasping to the self. There will be no lack of joy. They are not under the sufferings of they don't have mental sufferings as well. And so, but now at this moment, my mind is afflicted by mistaken conceptions, and my body is caused harm by unwholesome deeds. So for the bodhisattvas, as their bodies are happy due to their merits, and their minds are happy due to their wisdom, even if they remained in cyclic existence for the sake of others, why would the compassionate ones ever be upset? So due to the strength of the awakening mind, the Bodhisattva consumes their previous transgressions and harvests oceans of merit. Hence, they're said to excel the Shravakas. That's the hearers, the hearer arhats. So, having mounted the horse of an awakening mind that dispels all discouragement and weariness, who, when they know of this mind that proceeds from joy to joy, would ever lapse into despondency? So that is the answer to countering any feeling that we have of feeling disheartened that we cannot engage in these virtuous activities for a long period of time. So are we okay so far? Anybody has any questions or any comments? Okay. If not, then we go on to the second section. So the first section was basically on what is preventing us from engaging in joyous effort. Then this section is on what are the powers or qualities that we can cultivate in order to help us to generate and increase our enthusiasm or our joyous effort. And here, 4 supports or powers are mentioned. So the supports when working for the sake of living beings are aspiration, steadfastness, joy, and rest. So these are the 4 powers. Very briefly, I'll just explain a little bit very briefly. Power of aspiration really is this aspiration, very strong yearning to practice the Dharma, to engage in virtue. So that's the power of aspiration. And then the power of steadfastness is try once we decide or aspire to engage in virtue, and once we decide to do it, to not give up halfway. And then, of course, to bring in a very joyous attitude when we are engaging in this practice of the virtue. And the power of relinquishment is to put aside the tasks that we are engaged in at some points in times as and when appropriate. So these are the 4 powers. And aspiration is explained here as how do we develop this aspiration? It says that aspiration is developed through fear of misery and also by contemplating the benefits of aspiration itself. Thus, in order to increase my enthusiasm, I should strive to abandon its opposing forces, to amass the supports of aspiration, self-confidence, joy, and rest, to practice in earnest, and to become strong in self-control. So this particular paragraph basically is just summarizing what has been covered in the earlier verses and actually giving a very brief summary of what is to be covered in the next sections. So here we take a deeper look at the power of aspiration. So remember that aspiration is aspiring to practice the Dharma and is developed through fear of misery and by contemplating the benefits of aspiration itself. So this first few verses is to just look at it and say, having taken this bodhisattva vows, I'm supposed to try to overcome my faults or abandon my afflictions. And let's see. I shall have to overcome the boundless faults of myself and others. And in order to destroy each of these faults alone, I may have to strive until an ocean of aeons is exhausted. Yet, if within myself I do not perceive even a fraction of the perseverance required to exhaust these faults, then why do I not have a heart attack? For now I have become an abode of infinite misery. So this is knowing that at the moment the afflictions are going to cause us a lot of miseries in many, many lifetimes to come. And yet at this moment, I don't even have a bit of energy to try to get rid of these miseries. And so the Bodhisattva Shantideva is saying, knowing this, why don't you even have a heart attack and be very fearful? And then at the same time, not only am I not eradicating my faults, I'm also not spending a lot of effort cultivating good qualities. So likewise, I shall have to realize many excellent qualities for myself and others. And in order to attain each of these qualities alone, I may have to acquaint myself with its cause until an ocean of aeons is exhausted. However, I've never developed acquaintance with even a fraction of these excellences. How strange it is to squander this birth I found by some coincidence. So that is wasting a precious human life away by not engaging in developing some of these good qualities as well. And this one, the next verse is very interesting. I have not made offerings to the Lord Buddhas. I have not given the pleasure of great festivals. I have not performed actions for the teachings. I have not fulfilled the wishes of the poor. I have not granted fearlessness to the frightened, and have not given happiness to the weak. All I have given rise to is the agonies in the mother's womb and to suffer. So actually, these two verses is apparently intended for people who are saying that, hey, maybe, I'm not as bad as you say that I am, that I truly am engaging in some sort of virtuous activities. And so maybe, some of those criticisms do not apply to me, and I do have joyous effort. And then if you are one of these persons who say, I'm actually not doing too badly, then Bodhisattva Shantideva is trying to say, have a think about how you're engaging in these virtuous activities. Are you doing them well? Are you very meticulous in making offerings to the holy objects in terms of your visualization, in terms of the offerings that you gather? Do you listen attentively to the teachings? Have you been, really trying to help the poor and so on? And so just to give us a dose of reality, then yes, we may be engaging in some virtuous activities, but there's still a long way to go. And so we really should try to increase our effort, our energy towards engaging in virtue. Not meant to put us down, but just for us to be understanding the reality that we still have a lot to do and we can do better. So coming to verse 39, both now and in previous lives, such deprivation has arisen because of my lack of aspiring for the Dhamma. Who would ever reject this aspiring for Dhamma? The Mighty One himself has said that aspiration is the root of every facet of virtue. Basically, whatever virtues we want to engage in, it starts with an aspiration, a very strong yearning for wanting to do them. And this is something that we can all understand because, as with anything else, whatever we want, we must aspire to want it. And so then the question is, how does one develop this as strong aspiration that yearns for the Dharma, yearns for virtue? Anyone has any idea? How do we develop this strong aspiration? So Bodhisattva Shantideva's response is, its root is constant acquaintance with the ripening effects of actions. It is by constant meditation on the ripening effects of karma in order to increase our conviction in the infallibility of karma. So the next verses are on karma. And talking about karma, a lot of times, again, I think on an intellectual level, we tend to agree that karma is at work. But when it comes to really internalizing it and really developing a conviction in it, maybe some of the very fortunate ones really have a very firm conviction. Some of us may wonder that, oh, okay, is there really karma at work all the time? Especially when we come across some news of some senseless acts of violence. And we say, okay, some people engage in very atrocious acts and they don't seem to have suffered the consequence for that. Do we ask ourselves sometimes? And some people who are kind of innocent, the children, why are they, the subjects of acts of violence? And so when we reflect on karma, really, I think we do have to reflect on karma in the context of the Buddhist worldview of just many reincarnations, many lives. Otherwise, we would just ask these questions. We are all very appalled. It doesn't mean that the acts of violence can be condoned, but when we start asking these questions, then I think a very helpful question to ask is, what about this perpetrator of the violence? What is he or she going to experience in their future lives? Because most of the time you're just saying, okay, justice for all these people who have been killed. And we don't ask, what about this person who has been perpetuating the violence? And so I think karma is really something that we would just have to refer to our own examples in order to develop a stronger conviction in. But basically, the four general characteristics of karma that Buddha has taught is that karma is definite. Yeah, cause and effect. Karma is definite. It is expandable. From a small action, we can grow into a very big result. And if the cause has not been created, the result won't be experienced. And karma doesn't get lost. So, there's the flip side. If it has been created, it won't get lost. The results will be there. And so now having a look at the actual verses that talks about the karma, physical pain, mental unhappiness, all the various kinds of fear, as well as separation from what is desired, all arise from an unwholesome way of life. However, by committing wholesome actions, which are motivated by aspiration in the mind, wherever I go, I shall be presented with tokens of the fruit of that merit. Yet by committing negative actions, although I may wish for happiness, wherever I go, I shall be completely overcome by weapons of pain caused by my wrongful life. So really having to develop within ourselves this firm conviction that unwholesome activities can only lead to suffering and that only virtues can lead us to happiness. So as a result of virtue, I shall dwell in the spacious, fragrant, and cool heart of a lotus flower. My radiance will be nourished by the fruit of the conqueror's sweet speech. My glorious form will spring from a lotus unfolded by the mighty one's light. And as a bodhisattva, I will abide in the presence of the conquerors. So this particular verse, I think, is actually referring to being reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land. And so that is the first verse related to developing aspiration. And to help us to develop this aspiration, it is just very, very closely tied with our conviction in karma. Then, having developed this aspiration to want to engage in virtue, then we go on to cultivating or applying the power of steadfastness. And what this means is saying, be realistic, really assess for yourself what can be done, what cannot be done at this point in time. And then once you undertake to do it, don't give up. Because otherwise we're just going to be, creating this habit of having tasks or creating this karma of always starting things and not being able to complete them. And so these two verses read, first of all, I should examine well what is to be done to see whether I can pursue it or cannot undertake it. If I'm able, it is best to leave it. If I'm unable, it is best to leave it. But once I've started, I must not withdraw. If I do, then this habit will continue in other lives, and wrongdoing and misery will increase. Also, other actions done at the time of its fruition will be weak and will not be accomplished. And the powers of steadfastness is developed through what is known as three types of confidence, self-confidence. Self-confidence should be applied to wholesome actions, the overcoming of disturbing conceptions, and my ability to do this. Thinking, I alone shall do it, is the self-confidence of action. Powerless, their minds disturbed, people in this world are unable to benefit themselves. Therefore, I shall do it for them, since unlike me, these beings are incapable. So the three types of confidence are respectively the self-confidence of action, which is this confidence that I will do it myself. Like I will take the responsibility to help the others. Because a lot of people have not come across the Dharma, they're unable to practice it. So I alone will try to develop the qualities to be able to help these people. Then there is also the confidence that's related to overcoming afflictions, and there is the self-confidence about ability. But whatever we want to do, to undertake actions for others, it should not be tainted by an afflicted pride. So even if others are doing inferior tasks is not Dharma related. Why should I sit here doing that? But I do not do these tasks because of self-importance. That is the afflicted pride. It would be best for me to have no such pride. So when we're doing it, we should not be thinking, oh, because I'm superior, I know the Dharma, that's what I'm doing for you. No. Yeah. Then the second one here is about the self-confidence about ability. When crows encounter a dying snake, they will act as though they were eagles. Likewise, if my self-confidence is weak, I shall be injured by the slightest downfall. So here's saying we must have confidence in our ability. We must have this courage and determination that we can overcome afflictions. Because otherwise, if our self-confidence is weak, then even a small affliction can bring us down or can affect us. So the analogy here is that the dying snake is our the weak self-confidence. Then even a crow can just act on it and attack it. So how can those who out of faint-heartedness have given up trying find liberation because of this deficiency? Yet even the greatest obstacle will find it hard to overcome one with a firm mind. Therefore, with a steady mind, I shall overcome all falls, for if I'm defeated by a fall, my wish to vanquish the three realms will become a joke. And so if we do have this great courage and determination and self-confidence in our ability, then even great adversities will not overcome us. But if I'm just, defeated by even some slightest obstacles, then, how can we ever hope to, overcome the sufferings of the true realms, attain nirvana, attain Buddha? And so this one is saying, well, I will have this confidence that I can overcome all the afflictions. I will conquer everything, and nothing at all shall conquer me. I, a child of the lion-like conqueror, shall remain self-confident in this way. And the next few verses actually makes a distinction between having self-confidence and having self-importance. Because in some texts, both of these terms are being translated as pride. And so then the distinction has to be made between the pride that has to be cultivated and the pride that's an affliction that has to be abandoned. So whoever has self-importance is destroyed by it, is disturbed and has no self-confidence. For those with self-confidence do not succumb to the power of the enemy, whereas the former are under the sway of the enemy of self-importance. Inflated by the disturbing conception of my self-importance, I shall be led by it to the lower realms. It destroys the joyous festival of being human. I shall become a slave, eating the food of others. Stupid, ugly, feeble, and everywhere disrespected. Tough people bloated by conceit are also counted among the self-important. Tell me, what is more pathetic than this? So these are some of the adverse consequences that we'll suffer if our actions are driven by this afflicted pride. Whoever seizes self-confidence in order to conquer the enemy of self-importance, they are the self-confident ones, the victorious heroes. And in addition, whoever definitely conquers the spread of this enemy's self-importance completely wins the fruit of a conqueror, fulfilling the wishes of the world. If I find myself amidst a crowd of disturbing conceptions, I shall endure them in 1,000 ways, like a lion among foxes. I will not be affected by this disturbing host. Just as men will guard their eyes when great danger and turmoil occur, likewise I shall never be swayed by the disturbances within my mind, even at times of great strife. It would be better for me to be burned, to have my head cut off, and to be killed, rather than ever bowing down to those ever-present disturbing conceptions. So likewise, in all situations, I should do nothing other than what is good. So these are really verses to say that we must try very, very hard not to be influenced or come under the sway of our afflictions, because we do know that any action that's driven by our afflictions will just land us into more and more suffering. And so, that is why we want to have this confidence and the courage and determination to vanquish our afflictions at all time, and rather to bear with some hardship than to react or respond or act under the influence of these afflictions. And then next we come to the power of joy. And I think this is just to say that bodhisattvas who engage in this deed, engage in virtues, actually derive a lot of enjoyment from the act itself. And when we are happy doing something, then of course we don't feel burnout, we don't feel that we have to stop, that we're doing too much, and in fact we want to do more and more of it. And so just like those who yearn for the fruits of play, bodhisattvas are attracted to whatever task they may do. They never have enough, it only brings them joy. Although people work in order to be happy, it is uncertain whether or not they will find it. But how can those whose work itself is joy find happiness unless they do it? If I feel that I never have enough sensual objects, which are like honey smeared upon a razor's edge, then why should I ever feel that I have enough merit which ripens in happiness and peace? Thus, in order to complete this task, I shall venture into it just as an elephant tormented by the midday sun plunges into a cool, refreshing lake. So, this is saying that we all want to be happy. But for ordinary people, we put in a lot of effort to want to be happy, and yet it is not even guaranteed that we will experience happiness. And furthermore, if in striving for happiness, we are just driven in our actions by our ignorance, our attachment, our anger, it will just lock us more and more into samsara. And so it is like saying, okay, in running after the sensual objects, we actually is like tasting honey that's smeared on a razor's edge. And again, I find this kind of graphical description very useful for me to think about the nature of samsara. That if we do truly understand that we are licking honey on a knife's edge, I think the honey will not taste the same anymore. So really, so I think it's very, very useful, just to think about that. And so if we put in so much effort for doing something, that will not actually bring us, infinite happiness, then why don't we put in even more effort to try to engage in actions that's guaranteed to bring us infinite happiness? And so, to really inspire ourselves and to bring in a lot of joy while we're engaging in the virtuous actions. And this last one, I think for many of us, I think we really like this one. Power of relinquishment, right? Take a rest. That is what we like to do most of the time. But actually, I'm just thinking that this one is actually advice given in the context of a bodhisattva's practice, and we do see in our teachers, you know, acts that our teachers are really working so tirelessly all the time in order to bring benefits to sentient beings. And it is really, I think, in that context that we want to request them to take a rest from time to time. And for us, probably it doesn't really apply, right? What kind of, very energetic virtuous actions are we doing all the time? Of course, I mean, in general, we do have to pace ourselves. But so this power of relinquishment is to say that when we do get physically and mentally exhausted, then instead of pushing ourselves and then experiencing a breakdown, just to put aside, when my strength declines, just leave it aside for the moment and then pick it up when we regain the strength again. And actually, this verse has two types of relinquishment. The first two sentences is referring to what is known as a temporary relinquishment. And the second two is to say, having done something well, I shall put it aside with the wish to accomplish what will follow. So this is just saying, this is what is known as a complete relinquishment. It's just when you have completed an act of virtue well, then you kind of just let go of that and then move on to the next act. I'm not sure whether it is just, instead of thinking about it, or maybe having ruminating about it, or having a certain bit of sense of pride about it. But basically, having done something well, let's move on to the next one. So this is the other type of relinquishment. And so now we have covered sections on what to do if we don't even gather this energy to want to engage in joyous effort, how to counter our laziness. We have talked about the 4 powers in order to help us to generate and to increase our joyous effort. And then having done that, then what we want to do next is to practice earnestly with mindfulness and introspection in order to guard against the afflictions arising, or to try to uh, guard against any transgressions of vows, and to make sure that we are engaging in this in a very mindful way. And so here it says just that we keep our attention on the virtuous object. Just as an old warrior approaches the swords of an enemy upon the battlefront, so shall I avoid the weapons of the disturbing conceptions and skillfully bind this enemy. If someone dropped a sword during a battle, they would immediately pick it up out of fear. They likewise, if I lose the weapon of mindfulness, I should quickly retrieve it, being afraid of hell. So really mindful to remember the virtuous object. Just as poison spreads throughout the body and depends upon the circulation of blood, likewise, if a disturbing conception finds an opportunity, unwholesomeness will permeate my mind. Those who practice should be as attentive as a frightened man carrying a jar full of mustard oil, who is being threatened by someone with a sword and told that he will be killed if he spills just one drop. Really guarding. And this verse on number 70 about the poison is saying that sometimes you may think that something is just a very small affliction and you don't do anything to counteract it. But just like a poison which may start small within the body, sort of just permeates the whole the blood system, a small affliction can just take hold in our mind and grow to become stronger and stronger. And then we start accumulating very strong non-virtues, which may then cause us to suffer rebirths in the lower realms. So really to be very, very careful about even something that is small. And so these are some of the methods in order to cultivate this mindfulness. Just as I would swiftly stand up if a snake came into my lap, likewise, if any sleep or laziness occur, I shall quickly turn it back. Each time something unwholesome occurs, I should criticize myself and then contemplate for a long time that I shall never let this happen again. Likewise, in all these situations, I shall acquaint myself with mindfulness. With this motivation as a cause, I shall aspire to meet with teachers or accomplish the tasks they assign me. In order to have strength for everything, I should recall before undertaking any action the advice in the chapter on conscientiousness, and then joyfully arise to the task. So here, I would like to sort of just say something about verse 73. When I read this, my tendency is to say, yes, we should be a bit strict on ourselves, yeah, so as not to be indulgent. But on the other hand, sometimes we can be a bit harsh on ourselves as well. And so here I was just thinking that we may want to strike a bit of balance. Uh, instead of just scolding ourselves all the time, when we engage in something that's unwholesome, to just think about it and try to resolve to refrain from doing this again. So our teachers have advised in the context of purifying our negativities. There is one opponent power that is making this resolve not to engage in the action again. But it may not be the case that we would want to just jump in and say, forever from now, I will not engage in this. And then we can't keep the promise, we can't keep the commitment, and then we feel very stressed about it. So for things that we can commit to, not repeating. We try our best to say, for as long as we, really to be mindful and not repeat that. But for some of the other negativities, like harsh speech. So are we able to resolve at this moment that we'll never speak anything, say anything harsh to anybody forever? So maybe for harsh speech, if I've engaged in a harsh speech, or maybe in a divisive speech, then to say, okay, I recognize that this is not something that I should be doing. It's going to result in negative consequences. But maybe just to have a resolve, then okay, at least for tomorrow, I'll refrain from making harsh speech to this person, and try very much to keep to that. So in a very incremental way. And so in that context, like taking an 8 Mahayana precepts for a day would be something that's very, very useful, I think, for helping us to try and sort of refrain from negativities and to accumulate merit. And so now we have come to this final verse in this chapter, which is, just as the wind blowing back and forth controls the movement of a piece of cotton, so shall I be controlled by joy, and in this way accomplish everything. So in everything that we do, just to be permeated by this sense of joyfulness and be very happy that we are sort of moving the train of our mind towards something that will be most beneficial for us, most beneficial for sentient beings. So, just summary. And so we started by defining what is Joyous effort, which is finding joy in what is wholesome, delighting in virtue. And then we took a look at what is the main factor that is causing us not to engage well in this joyous effort, and it relates to the 3 types of laziness. Laziness that is wanting to procrastinate, that's attached to idleness. The laziness that's attached to unwholesome activities. And the laziness that's disheartened by virtue. And so how to change our way of thinking in order to counter them, including meditating on that, and then using the 4 powers to help us to generate and strengthen the joyous effort, starting with the power of aspiration, aspiring to practice the Dharma, power of steadfastness with the 3 kinds of self-confidence, the power of joy, power of relinquishment. And then having done that, then to always guard ourselves. We need to focus our mind on the positive actions, guard ourselves against the afflictions, but earnestly practicing mindfulness and introspection. Thank you very much. And does anybody have any questions? Oh, in a way, I mean, whatever it is, and this chapter, it is something that is quite easy for us to understand. And some of us may say that this is just common sense. And really, the challenge is in applying it and being able to do it. So just open for any comments or any questions. Jyotila, yeah.
Manla, I just wanted to thank you for this. It was very lucid, and like you said, it may seem like something that is quite evident, but to remind ourselves constantly of this, there are very useful pointers which you have touched upon. So thank you so much for this. I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jyotila. I have some questions that I thought of, which is again really just inviting ourselves to have a think about them and see what may be applicable. So I was just thinking, for our own reflection, what is the type of laziness that really is the greatest obstacles for our own development of joyous effort? What may work for us in this meditation on death to generate a sense of urgency to practice the Dhamma? And having this understanding of how the four powers are to be cultivated. Because, are they cultivated sequentially? Do we start with having an aspiration first? And if that is the case, and we think that we are, lacking in our energy or our joyous effort, then really having to go back to this very first power of aspiration and ask why we don't have a strong aspiration to practice the Dharma or engage in virtue. And then, it brings us to the related question of, if that's the case, then do we truly have a conviction in karma? What will work for us to develop that conviction? And so I would just like to invite you to share some of your thoughts on this and some of your experiences. Yeah, Jyotiji.
Manla, there are so many things that went on in the head when you were. There's so many instances. There is one particular thing which you said, which I try to remember always, which is that when we, for me especially, it is like, will you ever be able to do this, And then the third type of laziness that you spoke about, not that the other two are not there, but then the third one is always there. And to remind, to draw a balance that you said, that while you analyze, to have a balance, not to be harsh on yourself, and at the same time to just see that there is an issue which is causing an obstacle. So I, of the many things, I just wanted to share one thing, that the small incremental things that you can do to maybe improve yourself a little bit better than what. So one thing which I try to do is just take one aspect and try to do that particular day. I may succeed, I may not succeed, but I keep trying to tell myself, which is to lower my decibel levels, at least do that. So maybe, I mean, even when I'm talking normally, I tend to have a high decibel level. So maybe, at least lower that. That's the least I can do, Then maybe when I'm angry also, I will slowly develop a habit of at least lowering. And I feel that has helped in many ways, although, I mean, I know it. I don't know if people around know it, but I do try to make a conscious effort. But yes, so these are very, very useful things that you spoke about. And it kind of, even that small thing which I experienced myself, it's like an increment for myself also. I mean, or in to not stop, that there is no other choice, that there is only that we have to take that step at some point. And no matter where we are, we have to take that step. So you start it wherever you are, in whatever small way, but you do it. So you gain that conviction. So I'm not sure if I've completely gained the conviction, but I keep getting these, remind myself of these. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jyotila. That's very useful. Before I respond a bit more, I would just like to say that your voice sounds really, really calm. I don't know where the decibel comes in. Yeah, but yes, I think yes, just to do something, a little small step at a time, and so that we also don't feel discouraged when we can't do it. But I suppose also striking a balance between thinking that that is the extent of my ability. And so it is always a very difficult act of fine-tuning and finding, what is the thing that we can probably move a bit faster on sometimes as well. Yeah. But as you say, I think you're spot on, that there is just two options, right? One is to remain in samsara kind of forever and experience the suffering. The other one is try to, cultivate our mind so that we move closer towards nirvana and Buddhahood. And so if we are very, very clear in our mind and we are very convinced that we just have to do it, then yeah, as you say, then slowly bringing in the methods and techniques that have been taught, maybe starting with smaller steps, and then trying to gather momentum along the way. Yeah. So thank you so much. Any other experience of sharing? Any?
Hello,
Yes. Hi. Yes.
Mongla.
Yes.
I really want to say thank you so much. I'm so privileged to take this opportunity today. And then it was really mind-blowing for me. As a layperson, we cannot expect that we know everything. It's not about age, right? It's about experience. But the way you presented it with the all visualization, it's click right away, what's going on in the brain. And I really want to say thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to see you in the future. It's really helpful for me. And then now when you have this question, which is something new, we were, usually we have a presentation and then they ask the question for us. But that's, in this case, you are already ready. You already have a question. So thank you for that too. Yeah. Laziness in my life. I wanted to share the one thing in my life experience. When my mom died in '69, I was pregnant with a 3-month baby girl, and it took me a 2 year to realize what's going on in my life. And then after that, I realized that the mother who gave me birth, she's no more in this world. So then what? Next is my turn. So that strike me all the time in my life. So I was keep looking for uh, what's what's the benefit for me and my kids as a mother. So then, fortunately, I've been introduced by Geshe Doshi Tamdula, and I've been taking it classes constantly. Every day I try to learn one thing from Geshe-la, because when you learn from after decades for 3, 4 decades, so you are absolutely nothing. So you start from zero. But every day I try to put a seed on myself. And when I distract, then I just think about it. Okay, in a life, there's no excuse, there's no complaint. No matter what, the life gonna end. So I keep remind myself this thing. But like you said, as a layperson, we have a lot of responsibility, but still, um, we have this opportunity. So I'm taking it. I would like to say that I keep trying to focus myself. I keep try to teach myself. Okay, this is the only last chance. So like this morning, I saw the Lemula share the when you have a session this morning. I totally forget that, but it's to remind me. I think it's really fortunate that I saw that, and I, I usually don't read it, but I read it to your background, and then it's clicked me. I said she must be a great, because I know Buddhism is so deep and profound, but the thing is, people like us, we have not such blessed, because we are too much. Uh, Engaged with so many things in life. So people like you, when you show the image and description and then solution, that's give us another chance for our life. So I would say thank you so much. I will keep doing it. Thank you for the Tibet House for all this platform. Thank you, Limula. Thank you, Gisela. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Pampala. Yeah. So yes, and no, it's actually really thank you to all the teachings from our great teachers from the Buddha and Bodhisattva Shantideva that we have this wisdom to share today with all the participants. And it is really wonderful that you are, trying to learn the Dharma on a very consistent basis from Geshe-la. And I think that is the greatest gift that you are introducing to your children as well. That by introducing the Dharma to them as well. Yeah, that's really wonderful. Yeah. And any other questions or comments? Mm. So if not, then I think we will end with a dedication. And so thank you so much for coming in to attend this session, to do a bit of sharing of the Dhamma and a bit of reflection and discussion. And definitely we would like to dedicate this merit and make sure that it's not wasted. And before we do that, I would like to have a last slide. And so, okay, of course, today, as I mentioned, it is really due to the greatness of the Buddha and all the teachers that we're able to do this sharing, and that it can be useful for some of you. And personally, I'm very, very thankful to all my teachers, teachers whom have received teachings in person, through the recordings, through their notes, through their books, in order to be able to even, add on whatever little that I can manage to share. And so in the course of preparing for this session, I actually came across a set of notes that I took down quite a few years ago. And it just so happens that it is about Bodhicaryavatara. And I saw this, that basically the dedication prayer that we have been doing all the time, that many teachers have included as end dedication prayers in their teaching sessions, and the prayer that we usually do, the one prayer if we are short on time to do dedication. And I realized that they are totally correlated with chapters in the Bodhisattva's Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and which is that when we say may the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow, it relates to the first 3 chapters. And then may that bond have no decline is related to the practices in 4, 5, 6, to make sure that the practices don't decline. And then the last 3 is to ensure that we are able to generate and develop and grow this bodhicitta. And I thought this is absolutely beautiful, because in this dedication prayer, we are basically just encapsulating our aspiration for the entire bodhisattva path in order to gain full enlightenment. So I would like to invite everyone just to recite this dedication prayer as a way to end the session. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that bond have no decline, but increase forevermore. So thank you very much to everybody for attending the session today. And Pempala, we'll be doing another talk in 2 weeks' time. So if you can, please to come and join.
Yes, I
And
would
also,
love
I forgot to mention, that the first 6 chapters have been covered by other Dharma brothers and sisters in earlier sessions of this series of talks. So if you have not, watched them or attended the sessions, please do watch the recordings on Tibet House's YouTube channel as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tibet House. Thank you, Limala. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Jodila, and thank you, Ajahn, for sharing your thoughts and your beautiful words. So, with this, we have come to the end of today's program. And on behalf of Tibet House, I would like to thanks a lot to Dr. Manwangla for accepting as a speaker for today's session, and for a very wonderful and amazing presentation today. Thank you so much for that. And also thank you for sharing your valuable knowledge. And we are like eternally grateful for the time and effort that you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. So thank you once again. And I also want to thank all the participants for joining today's session. And it always has been honored to have you all in our events. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.